Hey guys, gonna try to get through another video. This is gonna be part 3 of my life story. Hopefully, I don't cry. I'm hoping I don't, but I mean, there's no guarantee I won't. Um, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get into it. Um, I'm hoping to cover a lot of ground. We're on page 6 of 21, so and a lot of it's not bad. Like the last, I would say 5-6 pages are actually great. Um, a lot of growth is in them. I didn't realize it then, but there's a lot of growth in them. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right in. I left off where, let me see, let me back up just a second. Okay, we were at the group home and they let us go back. So one day we were at school and an officer came and he wanted to talk to all the children about sexual abuse. During this time, I was still talking to Gina. Um, he gave us cards that had stuff written on it that he had went over with us, and the whole time the man was talking, I screamed inside myself not to cry. I now understood why my dad didn't want us to tell anyone. When the officer would look my way, I would just put my head down. I couldn't look him in the eyes. I felt like if he looked into my eyes, he would see everything. I often had trouble looking people in the eyes because I felt like it exposed my secrets. Several times another lady in the class would get on to me for having my head down. I remember the teacher was telling her to leave me alone, that it was all right. I trusted Gina and the counselor, Mrs. Swan, a lot more than I did a police officer. I didn't want to tell a man that could possibly torture me till death, as my dad had told me police do whenever you get put in jail. And since a lot of my dad's guilt was reflected onto us, I felt like if I was just as guilty as he was. But the officer confirmed my beliefs about the whole sexual side of what my dad was doing, and I didn't really know how wrong it was. I just knew that it held a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and it was something I didn't want exposed. He said it's important to know it's not your fault. I didn't understand how it wasn't my fault. I participated, therefore I felt guilty. At that moment, I knew that that's what Gina was waiting to hear. She wanted to know about the sexual abuse. I had to tell her about it. Not just the cruelty we were made to endure, I was gonna have to tell them my biggest secrets. I didn't understand why this stuff made me feel so bad on the inside. The beating hurt so bad on the outside, but it didn't change how I saw myself. I didn't understand why this stuff was so different. It was, and I talk about how it didn't affect me as much. It affected me. It's not that it didn't affect me as much, it just affected me in a different way. And looking back now, I can definitely see how it completely tore me apart. Because I knew something was wrong about it. I knew something was different about this kind of pain. I didn't associate it with pain though. When my dad seen the card, he said it was garbage, that the officer was just trying to put innocent men in prison. He held an intense investigation trying to find out if I had did anything that day that would put him under suspicion again. He told me if he found out that I did or that I said anything that he would kill me. He threw it away and he made me a new one. This one didn't point out how much wrong was actually going on. I can't recall what was on either of the cards, but it seemed like it was the same words, just in a different order. I can't. Gina took pictures of it and she put it in the file. I explained to her that I couldn't return home without it, that he had instructed me to have it on my person at all times, in case I became confused about what the truth really was. I was still too embarrassed to tell them about the sexual activity at home, but I knew I was going to have to find the words to talk about it. I didn't really know the words to talk about it. There wasn't much talking during that kind of stuff. It was, I don't know, it's just not something you talk about. That Friday, I remember telling Gina and Mrs. Swan I didn't want to go home. I asked if I could go home with one of them. They told me, or they asked me why I didn't want to go home since I had never had a problem going home before. I told her about how I feared for our lives. I told her about the gun that he still had. About how he told us he was going to kill us and hide our bodies in the cave. I feared these threats were becoming more of a reality. I told her that I had seen him hide where I had seen him hide the revolver. When I got home, there were several cops looking for the guns. I knew he hid the revolver in an old freezer in the backyard. When they went to go check the freezer, they didn't find it. An officer said over the radio, "The revolver isn't here." My dad heard it. I'm gonna move this. Maybe there will be a little bit more light instead of such a shadow. Well, still a shadow. Sorry about that. They only found the shotgun that was used the night that we had heard the gunshot. Me and my brother. He told us that he told him that he kept it for protection and cried and pleaded that he only had the one. They took the shotgun from him and scolded him for not obeying court orders. They noticed the hole in the wall from him trying to shoot my mom a few days prior. He claimed it was an accident. He still had the revolver hidden though, and he knew someone had told. That night he made my brother and I sit on our beds facing the wall with my mother in the middle of the room, and one of our beds was on this side, one of them was on this side, and we were meant to face the wall that way, and my mom was in the middle. He had his revolver and he demanded to know who rat him out. He thought it was my mom and her family. She told him, "That's impossible. I haven't used the phone all day. I've been with you this whole time. You would know if I'd told anyone anything." And I started to scream as loud as I could. I thought he was going to kill her, and I was the one to blame, not her. Then my brother started to scream. It made my dad mad at us, so he started to threaten us instead of my mom. He said, "If you don't get them to shut up right now, I'll paint this bedroom with their brains." When he would point the gun at me or my brother, my mom would jump in front of the gun. I knew from past experiences with his rage, as long as you could distract him long enough, he would give up. He eventually gave up, and we all went to bed. When I returned to school, I told Gina what happened. She told me that they looked for the gun that I had described, but they didn't find it anywhere.
I just panned this.
You did? It's okay. The police told her that they found the bullet hole just above the bed of in my parents' bedroom.
Get me.
How the patch was fresh because he had tried to patch it up and hide that he had actually shot a gun off in there. It was, she told me she didn't want to risk sending the cops back out and him doing us more harm or him killing himself if it wasn't found. I agreed it was a good idea to hold off on looking for the gun. I had another dream around this time, and in the dream, both my parents went to prison. I was talking with my real dad, and I told him I didn't want to tell on my dad if my mom would go to prison too. He told me if I didn't, that I wouldn't have a mother anymore. He said that she would die. He said if she went to prison, she would still be alive, and I would be sorry. I would be reunited with her again someday. He said if I chose not to do so, that she was really going to die. A couple days later, my parents were in the room all day. This much time together for my parents meant trouble for my mom, so we tried to see if we could hear what they were doing at the door. Eventually, my dad called me into his room. He had his revolver in his lap. He asked me, "Why do you want to know so badly what we're doing in here?" And I just shrugged at him. Then he said, "Do you know what this is?" And I said, "Yes." And he asked, he said, "What is it?" And I said, "It's a gun." And he said, "What kind of gun?" And I played dumb. And I said, "The real kind you shoot." I knew it was a revolver. He took all the bullets out of the gun and he put one bullet back in. He spun the chamber and he asked, "Do you trust me?" And I said, "Yes." And then he pointed the gun to my forehead and he asked again, "Do you trust me?" And I replied, "Yes," again. Again, shaking inside uncontrollably, I looked into the chamber of the gun and I didn't see the bullet. And then in the barrel, I knew I couldn't die just yet. I still had to get us away from him. He asked, "Do you trust me enough to pull this trigger and you not die?" I felt if I'd have said yes, I might have died that day. When I replied no, he then backhanded me with the gun. He told me, "You're not my child. Get the hell out of my sight." I ran back into the living room and I told my brother what happened. I stressed to him not to go in there under no circumstance if he called for him. Some time passed and he called me back into his bedroom. He told me I could earn his forgiveness and be his child again by engaging in an orgy, basically. He didn't really, like, he had weird names for different sexual activities. He would use food as a way to reference stuff. So later I found out he was meaning an orgy. The way he said it, I didn't understand. I just complied with his wishes anyway. He told me to go get my brother, that my brother had to participate as well. I told my brother, and he agreed so that I could have my dad's forgiveness. The acts that we performed that day, they haunted me until recently. When I got back to school, I told Gina what happened. She asked me to draw a picture so she could better follow the events, and I showed her step by step where people were located on the bed, where they moved next, and everything in detail that happened. I told her something my dad told me while he forced me to please him orally. He said, "This is all you'll ever be good for. You're a bitch and a whore just like your mother. No man will ever love you. He will just use you for sex because that's all you're good for." I thought for a while it was true, and that maybe that day he had put a curse on me. Everywhere I tried to find love, I saw myself being treated just as he had described that day. As I told Gina and Mrs. Swan this statement he made to me, they both started to cry. They told me I was worth so much more, and that I should never forget it. I trusted Gina and Miss Swan. That's as far as my trust would go for a long time. That weekend, they came and arrested him. He went walking through a field into the woods where he'd claimed to receive revelation, just as Jesus did in the Bible. I found out later it was to spy on the neighbor's teenage daughter while she was in the pool. When the police arrived, they asked where he was, and my mom told them. They waited at the edge of the property and put him in cuffs. I knew this was the end, and I would never be mistreated again. Alrighty, guys, that's about all I can do. He got arrested, so I have on my notes, my 2-year-old is drawing all her little doodles, so I gotta stop her real quick. Y'all have a good day.